Let us understand how to use psql utility to perform database operations. Psql is command line utility to connect to the Postgres database server. It is typically used for the following by advanced database users. When I say advanced database users, they are nothing but DBAs, development leads, architects who have a level of knowledge with respect to databases. Typically, we use psql for managing the databases, managing the tables, load data into tables for testing purposes. We get databases, database objects, as well as data from production environments and run those things as part of non-production environments to ensure that we have good quality data for testing. That is one of the most common scenario where we use psql utility quite often. We need to have at least Postgres client installed on the server from which you want to use psql to connect to Postgres server. Without the Postgres client, psql will not be available. In our lab, we already set up Postgres server and hence psql will be automatically available. However, it is not mandatory to have Postgres server to have psql. You can see the output here. It is not saying no command found. It is throwing error because we haven't passed required information to connect to the database. You can actually validate by saying psql -help. It will provide you the insights about how you can leverage this to connect to a database. Even on your PC, even if it is Windows, you can set up something called as Postgres client. Once Postgres client is available, as long as you have access to a server on which Postgres is running along with credentials, you should be able to use psql from your Windows machine to connect to the database that is running on a remote server. We can run sudo -u postgres psql -u postgres from the server provided to you if you have sudo permissions on the server. Otherwise, we need to go with psql -u postgres -w, which will prompt for the password. Keep in mind that Postgres is a super user within psql. Developers will not typically have access to it. This is what is mentioned here. As a developer, we can use following command to connect to a database setup on Postgres server using user credentials. So this is the syntax. You can say psql -h to pass the host IP or DNS alias. You can also specify -p to pass the port number. Then you can specify -d to pass the database name. Then -U username. -W will prompt you for the password. Once you pass this information, you should be able to connect to the database using the user provided and can perform database operation directly. Assuming we have a database by name itversity_sms_db and user itversity_sms_user with permissions on this db, we can run this command to connect to the database by entering the password when it prompts for the password. If you want to validate, in your case, you will be getting access to some username, which will be your OS username, underscore whatever database you want to connect to. Those details will be provided to you. One of the database will be sms_db. So in your case, whatever your OS username is, that OS username underscore sms_db will be the database name. Whatever your OS username underscore sms_user will be the user. This user will have permissions on this database and hence he or she should be able to operate on this database without any challenges. When it comes to usage, we typically use psql to troubleshoot the issues in non-development servers. IDEs such as SQL Alchemy might be better for regular usage as part of development and unit testing process. If you are an entry-level developer, you might struggle with psql quite a lot. There are better IDEs such as SQL Alchemy, which can improve your productivity. If at all you have to connect to a database to validate whether the tables are created or not, what are the column names we have, whether the table have data or not, so and so forth. However, a bit advanced users or developers should be familiar with the command line utilities such as psql to build the databases for multiple purposes. One of them is to generate enough test data with good quality data from production in non-production environments. For this course, we will be primarily using Jupyter-based environment for practice. However, at times I will be covering some of the important aspects where you might have to leverage psql. Try to get comfortable with psql as much as you can. If not, you can leverage SQL Alchemy for most of the cases. If not, you can use Jupyter Hub also for running typical standard queries. in very few cases you have to use psql, and hence if you are struggling a bit, just try to be a bit comfortable with it by practicing. Don't worry too much if you are not making too much progress with respect to psql. You can defer it for now and move on to the other topics, and whenever you have some time you can practice in getting a bit of comfort level with respect to psql. Now let us validate whether we are able to connect to a database or not using this information. So I can copy paste this. Keep in mind that the order of arguments can be any. However, for each and every argument there is a value. For -h the value is localhost. So with -h you should use localhost only. With -p you should give port number. With -h either you can use localhost or whatever server you are trying to connect to. Many cases it need not be localhost. Just keep that in mind. With -p you just have to pass port number. The default port number for Postgres is 5432. For default ones you don't need to pass, but if the port number is not 5432 then you have to pass using -p. With -d you have to pass database name only. With -U you have to pass username. With the -W it will prompt you for the password. You can change the order of the control arguments. However, the corresponding values should be the appropriate values based on the control argument which you are specifying. For example, for -d you should be specifying only the database name. Now I can copy paste this. It will prompt for the password. I am entering the password. In your case, we'll be sharing those details, and you can actually use the password that is being shared with you to validate against your database. Typically, it will be the same password which you will be using to connect to the server. Now I am connected to the psql CLI. Let's run some commands here so that we are comfortable with psql up to an extent. If you want to list the databases to which the user you used to login have access to, which is nothing but itversity_sms_user, you can just say /l for list the databases. And you can see that these are the databases to which the itversity SMS user might have access or might not. We will see whether he have access or not by switching to some databases. Okay, now you can see the list of databases that are there. I'm coming out of this. To switch to a database, we can use /c like this, and let me try to switch to a database called as training_sms. It is prompting for the password, and it is able to switch to the database. However, ideally it should not be. We should not be connecting to the database and perform the operations. Typically we'll be disabling these permissions for the users. You might not be able to see when you actually try to log in. For now I have access to the database. I can actually look at the tables also, but it will be turned off when it comes to the actual usage. In this case the user can even drop the table T as he have permissions. Okay, he can see the database table names, but he is not able to drop the table. Let us see if he have access to query the data. Even he doesn't have access to query the data. He is able to list the tables, but he is not able to manage the tables or even query the data from the table or insert or delete the data from the table. Now let me come out of this by using /q. Q for quit. It will get us out of the psql. If you want to go back to the original database, again you have to use /c like this, and you have to specify the database name, and you will be able to switch the database. Now let us go back into the database once again using the credentials that are provided to us. Then the few other commands are nothing but /?, to get the help. So let's go here and run /? here. You can see that you are able to see all the commands that are available. Okay, you can go to this list whenever you get time and try to explore few things as you get comfortable with respect to Postgres in future. Now if you want to create a table, you can run this command called as create table t I serial primary key, which will create a table with one column called as I. That will be the primary key of the table. When you have primary key with a serial like this, because the column is specified as serial, there will be a sequence also associated with it. You can actually say /d to list the objects. You can see there is a table and sequence. Now, if you want to get the properties of the table, when I say properties, the column names, the data types of the columns, the primary key details, indexes, etc. You can actually say /d and then table name, which is nothing but t, and you can see the details with respect to the table. You can also get the details with respect to the sequence by passing the sequence. We did not create the sequence explicitly. When we create the table with one column as serial, it automatically created the sequence to support that serial column. The actual data type of I is integer only. However, because it is specified as serial, a sequence is created. It will be used whenever we insert data into the table. You will understand those aspects at a later point in time. For now, just to demonstrate the capabilities of /d for describe, I am using these objects and I am trying to get the details of those objects. Now you can also run the scripts using /i. You will be seeing how to use this /i to run a script to create the tables and load data into the tables at a later point in time. There are several other commands which you need to master over a period of time. Those things will be covered at a later point in time whenever it is relevant. You will understand some of the commands that is quite useful over a period of time. So that's about it with respect to psql. However, as developers, especially if you are at entry level, you might not be using psql that often. You might use better tools such as SQL Alchemy to improve your productivity, which will provide all these features with better interface. But still, you should spend some time in understanding some of the aspects of psql where it can become useful when it comes to troubleshooting some of the issues to production and all. Because with respect to production, they might not let you to connect to production servers from your PCs using tools like SQL Alchemy. You might have to perform SSH into the server, and from the server you might have to run psql command to connect to the database, and there you have to run certain queries to troubleshoot the issues related to production. And hence, those advanced users who has to troubleshoot the issues should be comfortable with psql. Like that, there are several scenarios where psql can come handy. So as you gain experience when it comes to connecting to the databases, try to get used to these command line utilities, which can help you in streamlining your troubleshooting capabilities and other capabilities related to your day-to-day activities as an engineer.